Let's talk some Seattle Seahawks football. And that means Corbin Smith is joining us once again from the great out west, which I can't wait to get out myself as a diehard Vancouver Canucks hockey fan. Corbin, good to talk to you again.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. It's been a while, and there's been a lot that's happened, a lot of unexpected things since the last time that you and I talked. So
yes. Both for the Seattle and for the team that I follow, the New York Jets. It's been refreshing. And speaking of Jet Seattle, it's amazing, too. I think a lot of people kind of forget because there's so much going on with Geno that people forget that Seattle has put this run together without Jamal Adams, which is really something else.
Yeah, that's been, honestly, it hasn't really been a topic that's been brought up a lot in the last few weeks because there's just been so many things going on with this rookie class, and Ryan Neal's playing really well in Jamal Adams' place. In fact, I would make the argument the last 4 weeks he's played like an all-pro safety. He's been that good for them. And they've got so many unsung heroes that have just emerged, and that has allowed them to jump out to the 6-3 start and really get things rolling. They've got a 1.5 game lead in the NFC West over the 49ers. I mean, if you would have told me this going into training camp or even out of training camp that the Seahawks are going to be 6-3 after the first 9 games, I would have been asking you to get your head examined just because, I was more optimistic about where they were trending than most prognosticators, but I still was looking at 7-8 wins probably being their ceiling. Now, they would have to go, I believe, 1-7 or 2-6 down the stretch to reach that. They're already basically 7 or 8 wins. And it's really been impressive, and it's really been a crazy coaching job, a crazy good coaching job by Pete Carroll and his staff, getting this young team to not only be competitive, but they're winning games by double digits on a consistent basis as well.
The whole Geno Smith factor, was there a specific point this season that, when was it that you said, this is for real? This could last. This isn't just a 1 or 2 week thing.
For me, it would be the Chargers game a few weeks ago. That was really the game where you saw Geno before that point making a lot of big throws, and he's completing such a high percentage of passes, and a lot of people are looking at that and thinking, oh, he must just be dinking and dunking. If you're thinking that, though, you haven't watched the Seahawks team play. Now, I don't think they're taking the deep shots on the outside. They're clearly not doing that the way that they did when Russell Wilson was playing quarterback for this team. But Geno has been able to make those throws when they become open. And he's made a lot of really difficult throws in the intermediate range in the middle of the field, which was a huge weakness in this offense with Russell Wilson as quarterback. He just didn't throw the football to those areas, particularly to tight ends. And tight ends have become focal points in this offense with Geno Smith. But that game against the Chargers, where they put up 37 points and Geno was just dropping dimes, 2 touchdown passes to Marquise Goodwin of 20-plus yards, their number 3 receiver, just – watching him out there, DK Metcalf exited end of the first quarter, and it didn't matter. Geno was still out there just throwing the ball all over the field. He was making key scrambles when he needed to. You saw him making adjustments at the line, audibling, and audibling to really good play calls at that. That has been a consistent basis this year. He's done a great job with pre-snap adjustments, and you can look at the wristband news that's been out there. I personally don't think that Pete Carroll was taking a shot at Russell Wilson with that. You can interpret it however you want. Certainly a lot of the other media members have thought that's exactly what he was doing, but he has been getting the team to the line quickly. They're getting those pre-snap adjustments in. He's reading the defense, and he's making way more times than not the right adjustments there. And this offense has been potent because of it. So that was really the point where it's like, this just doesn't look like a fluke to me at this point. The first 4 or 5 games, there's still a small sample size. We're now 9 games in the season, and I think the other thing that really jumps out, I already was on that side that this is not a fluke, but what really solidified it for me was last weekend. He throws a pick 6. Zaven Collins takes it back for the Cardinals for a touchdown, and Arizona's now up 14-10. And Geno Smith not only comes back with a strong drive, he leads 3 straight touchdown drives to just remove the soul from the Cardinals' bodies. I mean, just completely demoralized them. And they were running the football really well at that point. Geno himself had a couple clutch runs. He was throwing the ball over the place, 6 for 7 on their first touchdown drive, hit Lockett for a touchdown. Right there was all that I needed to see. Be like, you know what? This is the real deal. And this team has bought into him as a leader, as a quarterback, and they believe in him. And that's one of the reasons they're 6-3 right now.
Was there, and I'm sure you've had an opportunity, or you've heard a bunch of interviews with Geno, and I'm sure had to have been asked this question. Has there been a time in his career where, for Geno himself, where he kind of realized or maybe understood the game more, felt more confident, more mature? Was there that moment for Geno that he's been able to express to everybody that makes sense of why he's so confident in his abilities that he can actually perform the way he has?
Well, from a confidence standpoint, he said that's never wavered, and I believe him. I think that when you look at the fact that he's been a backup with 3 different teams for 7 years, that entire time, though, he's been behind 3 really good established quarterbacks, and I'm sure he learned a lot from all 3 of those players.
Yep.
And he's been with some really good coaches during that time, too. And I think Pete Carroll deserves a ton of credit because Pete Carroll was the one that decided, you know what, Geno can be my starting quarterback, and I've seen enough from him in these 3 starts that he had last year, especially the Jaguars game where he was throwing the ball over the place, really accurate, above 80% completion rate. He started to think, I think this kid can still be a starter in the NFL. I believe in him running Shane Waldron's offense, but I don't know that the confidence ever wavered for him. It was just, it boiled down to getting an opportunity, and he couldn't get that chance for 7 years. And there aren't very many similar stories out there when you're looking at quarterbacks that start a couple years and then they're on the bench for a number of years and then they find their way back into a starting role and suddenly become stars. Yeah. Geno is in a very select group there with guys like Rich Gannon, and then your guys like Kurt Warner that just came out of nowhere. Yep. There are very few other examples that I can think of where guys just suddenly the light switch came on the way that it has for him. So I think that certainly all of his experiences with the 3 teams he played for since he started for the Jets and then lost his job there, the broken jaw incident, all those things. Certainly this guy has matured a lot on the field, but the confidence, I think, has always been there. Now he's just getting a chance to show that in an offense that fits him really well. And the Seahawks, they know what his strengths are. They play to it really well, and they have a really good cluster of players that they put around him to give him a great chance at success.
What do you think the offense in general, what do they need to do to make themselves believe, or make you or the fans believe, that offensively at least they have a championship caliber unit?
Keep doing what they're doing. I don't think that they need to reinvent the wheel. I mean, I think if there's one thing to look at, I mentioned the deep passes. When you have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett as your top 2 receivers, it does feel like that would be the last ingredient there. Can you find a way to get a few more of those deep shots in there? And Geno has shown he can make those throws. That just has not been a big part of their offense. And we haven't seen very many downfield throws to DK Metcalf. He's made a much bigger impact in the short passing game than he did in his first 3 years, though. He's found the end zone 2 straight weeks, so is Tyler Lockett. So it seems like things are going in the right direction there, but you'd like to see a few more of those explosives. I mean, they've got the running game with Ken Walker III. They got 2 quality backups behind him, even with Rashad Penny being done for the season. The offensive line has been way better than I thought it was going to be, with 2 rookie tackles who already look like average starters at worst, and I think they're just going to keep getting better. Austin Blythe has been an upgrade to the center position. They're rotating guys at right guard, and it's working. Gabe Jackson and Phil Haynes both have injury histories. This is keeping them fresh. They're both playing well. Pretty similar starter caliber players. And the tight ends. I think this is the best trio of tight ends in the NFL. There might be some individual tight ends that are better than what the Seahawks have, but that trio, they are all very good players. They can all block. They can all catch. They can all create after the catch. And they're all red zone weapons. So many different guys around Geno Smith, and he's done such a great job of distributing the football to all of them. And we saw that this last week. He had 6 different receivers with 3+ receptions and 20+ receiving yards in their second win over the Cardinals. And he's just getting the ball all over the field. He looks so comfortable in the offense. So I think it looks like a championship caliber offense. They're ranked 4th in the NFL in scoring per game for a reason. They've been putting points on the board in bunches. They're efficient on third down, which is a huge change up from recent years with Russell Wilson under center. They're finishing drives now. That was the big thing in the red zone. Earlier in the year, they were leaving a lot of points off the scoreboard. That did not happen this past week. They were perfect in Arizona. They got in the red zone. They were putting 6 points to the board. If they're doing that with the way this offense has been humming, it's going to be a very difficult team to defeat.
All right, so on that offensive line, what is the weakness up front? Like, what would scare the Seahawks the most about losing either a player or feeling that, well, do we have to worry about rookie walls? Is there something that they just are just going to keep their fingers crossed and hope that such and such doesn't happen?
Well, obviously, Charles Cross, the number 9 overall pick, you got to keep him healthy. And Abe Lucas, some might view this as a hot take. I think Abe Lucas has been the better player of the two this year. They've both been good. But Abraham Lucas has been fantastic. He just seems like he's further along in the run blocking department. I think Cross is going to get there. But Lucas came into the league more polished in that regard. And he's got that mean streak to him that I don't know that Charles Cross necessarily has that same nastiness. So both those guys have been crucial to this offensive line playing the way they have because they've been so good as rookies and they just keep getting better as you would expect. I think in the middle, Austin Blythe, if he went down for an extended period of time, that would be another player that, not that he's a superstar center by any means, but he has been an upgrade in the communication standpoint, which has been huge for this line. And I will give Kyle Fuller credit. He came in for half a game against the Giants, and he played well a couple weeks ago. Last year, he really struggled when he was the starter at the beginning of the season, eventually lost his job. But maybe he's improved enough now with Andy Dickerson, the coach, that you could depend on him if he had to play a few games. But I think that is a pretty big drop-off still between those two. So those would be the two position groups. They've got good depth at guard. Jay Curhan can play guard and tackle, and he's like their 4th stringer at guard. So they've got depth at those positions. Stone Forsythe is an okay tackle that we haven't gotten to see very much. They drafted in the 6th round 2 years ago, but that's really your depth with Jay Curhan at tackle if one of those guys goes down. So I think tackle and center would be the areas of concern in that regard.
Basically, staying healthy along the offensive line, extremely important, though. What about, because you mentioned Goodwin comes out, has a big game. Eskridge is, now this is year 2. Is it, it's too soon to call anybody a bust, especially at the wide receiver position. What more does he need to do in order to justify that selection?
You got to start producing. That just plain and simple. And there have been flashes from him. He had a really good game in that first matchup against the Arizona Cardinals at Lumen Field, where he came through with some clutch third down catches that moved the chains. He blocked really well in the Chargers game, had a couple key blocks that sprung Ken Walker to third. I mean, there are things that you see. There's been a few encouraging kick returns in the last couple of games.
Okay.
You can see the athleticism, but he just can't get over the hump on offense. The chemistry with Geno and being able to catch the football, it just seems like most of the time they're trying to get him involved, it feels forced.
Yeah.
They haven't been able to organically get him involved and take advantage of his tools. And you feel like that breakout game is coming, and then you have an offer every single time that feeling comes in. No catches. And that's been happening throughout the season. So they just can't seem to find a way to get him going. I think the talent is there, but if they cannot get him contributing more on offense, that is going to be one of the few negative storylines of this season. A player that you invested a second-round pick in when you could have had Creed Humphrey last year, and Chiefs ended up getting him a few picks after that. That's going to be one that is certainly going to be one of the few negative storylines. What do we do with D. Eskridge moving forward if he doesn't start to pick things up and become a bigger focal point in this offense? I mean, they don't even need him to be a focal point. Just contribute a few catches a game, and he hasn't even been able to consistently do that.
You mentioned the tight ends, and Fant had a big game just recently, so last week. So there's so much more, though, there, isn't there, offensively, as far as what he could bring to the offense?
I feel like Fant, he was maybe one of those players that it took him 4 or 5 weeks to truly get involved in this offense. They were trying to throw the football to him, but most of his catches were at the line of scrimmage or just past the line of scrimmage, or he was catching 5 or 6 yard passes with 2 defenders draped all over him. You couldn't see the after the catch capabilities. This is a guy that ran a 4.5 coming out of Iowa. He's a really good athlete. Finally got to see that on that decisive 51-yard catch on a rollout tight end flat pass pattern the other day on that final scoring drive where he was able to break a tackle and then he's off to the races and ends up going 51 yards. That had not been seen to this point because the Seahawks did not put him in a lot of positions where he could create after the catch. But it feels like he and Geno Smith are starting to get on the same page, which is a scary thought because he wasn't there necessarily the first 4 or 5 weeks. He's now third on the team in receptions and receiving yards, so he's really awakened as of late, and he's given them a third target that really can stretch the defense. And Colby Parkinson can do that too. Will Dissly isn't the same athlete as those two guys, but he's such a reliable receiver in the short to intermediate game and a really good red zone option. He's the best blocker of the three. Again, this three-headed monster, they're running a lot of 3 tight end sets, and teams have yet to figure out how to defend that. I don't know how you do with the multi-talented group they have. All 3 of those guys can do everything. And so that has really opened this offense up.
What about the rookie class? You touched up on, or you teased that at the open, and I know Woolen, we did our first draft. Basically what we did was we were talking about our senior draft scout at our lads gave a list of the players that were the best day 2, day 3 picks and such. And when it was all said and done, I asked him a question because we were talking about Sauce Gardner being the rookie defensive player of the year. When it was all said and done, I said, who would be, if you had to line up a rookie defense and you have Gardner on one side, who would be on the other? And he said Woolen. So he's had a tremendous start to his career, being a 5th round pick. And he also talked about that he wrote for weeks on end before the draft of how much of a Seahawk he just looked. He dripped Seahawks with his size and length and so forth. And that has been just an incredible story that I'm not sure a lot of people, unless they're in Seattle, realize, because everybody talks about Geno, and deservedly so. But he's been just a remarkable rookie so far for the Seahawks defense.
Everybody's talking up Sauce Gardner, and they should be. He's having a great year. But if I had to pick between the 2 of those players for Defensive Rookie of the Year, I'd be giving Tariq Woolen a vote right now. And it's not because I cover the Seahawks. I look at the numbers and I look at the film. I mean, Woolen is still leading all corners in interceptions. He's had 3 pass breakups the last 3 games, and a couple of those he probably could have picked off, and he could have 5 or 6 interceptions. And what I'm noticing now, you're seeing it with quarterbacks. He is getting the Richard Sherman treatment right now, and I'm not a huge fan of that comp. I know that they both move from receiver to corner, but this is just the truth. Tariq Woolen is one of one. There has never been a 6'4" corner with 4.26 speed and 33.5-inch arms come into the league. I mean, that's never happened. So he's truly a lab creation. And of course, Pete Carroll had to be fired up to get him in the 5th round. I mean, this kid screamed Seahawk, and I did a ton of pre-draft scouting on him just because I saw the size, I saw the attributes, and thought, this is Pete Carroll's cornerback. Like, this would be who he would create on Madden if Pete Carroll played Madden. Yep. It would be Tariq Woolen. And I still thought it was going to take a year or 2 for him to be a starter for this team. And it became evident to me in rookie minicamp. This kid is going to push for playing time way quicker than we thought. Then we get to OTAs. He's already nipping at Sidney Jones' heels. And then a couple guys get banged up in training camp, and he takes the right starting quarterback job. And nope, Sidney Jones, you're not having it back. And he has never looked back. He made a few picks during training camp that were just phenomenal. There was one that Drew Lock was rolling out, and the receiver looked wide open, and he made a really good read, and he still got intercepted because Woolen sprinted across the field with those gazelle-like strides and then picked it off. And Pete Carroll talked to us after the practice and was like, that was just a special interception. You don't hear that very much out of a training camp practice, but he ended up making a similar play against the Lions and returning it for 6 points in week 4. He's just been dynamic, and quarterbacks are not targeting him. They just are not throwing the ball. I mean, Kyler Murray threw at him one time when he was in coverage against DeAndre Hopkins last week. Like, didn't even look most of the time, because that's the respect that this kid already has from the rest of the league.
When you take a look also at Kobe Bryant, I mean, there's a player that was overshadowed by Ahmad Gardner. But I mean, this is a guy he's the one that he was the Thorpe Award winner, so I think that gets like lost in the shuffle. And everything that Gardner brought to the table, it was understandable why Kobe Bryant though would be kind of the forgotten man. Now maybe he's also a forgotten man because of Woolen's having such a big start to the season. So how important has Kobe Bryant been to the secondary?
I'm not going to say that he's been as important as Tariq Woolen, but it's a very close second because he's punched the football out like he's Charles Tillman.
He loves to do that. Yeah.
4 forced fumbles. He should have had a 5th one Sunday. I'm surprised that they overturned that. I thought that Rondale Moore made a football move there, but I digress. This kid seemingly every week is punching the football out of somebody's hands. He's really picked up slot corner quickly. You look at his body type and you think he played some slot corner. He had not before coming into the NFL. So that was a major learning curve for him, having to deal with routes going both directions and not having the boundary to protect him. I mean, that is a big difference for slot corners. And you could tell early in the season that he was going through the growing pains of just playing a new spot along with being a rookie. And he's a very quick study. And I think that's how he compensates. He's not the bad athlete I think that some people were looking at him as. His pro day, he ran a faster 40 that was in the 4.4s. So he was able to offset the combine not having necessarily great numbers. But even his pro day, his 3-cone was was under the 10th percentile. Like, he is not a guy in testing that tested well at all in agility testing. And as a slot corner, you have to be able, you got to be agile. You got to be able to move. Yep. So there were a lot of people that questioned that when the Seahawks moved him there. I'd seen this kid play enough football that I didn't question. I'm like, he just plays faster on a football field.
That's right. He's a football player.
He's so instinctive. Yes. He's so football smart, his IQ, that it makes him play faster. How many times have we seen that guys that have had the Seahawks have another one on their team. Quandre Diggs was that way coming out of Texas. Everybody's looking at his testing numbers. They're like, this guy's nothing. Goes in the 6th round. Point. And he's one of those guys that plays so much faster than those testing numbers on a field. Kobe Bryant is the same way. He has such a great football acumen that he plays extremely fast. He gets himself in position to make plays consistently, and we're seeing that. He's getting better every single week. So both those guys have been outstanding as rookies, and they're playing a lot of snaps for the Seahawks.
Is this by far... Like, what when you take a look at this particular regime, the Pete Carroll regime, the Schneider regime, and so forth that's been going on for many years, how does this draft class, it has to be top 2. Am I wrong?
Well, you have that 2012 draft class where Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner were selected in the 2nd and the 3rd round. That obviously was a dynamic draft class. That's one of the best draft classes in NFL history because they had Bruce Irvin in the 1st round. He's had a really good career. He's back with Seattle and playing like he's 25 right now. So that's been a really good 1st-round pick that a lot of people questioned when Seattle made that selection. They had a defensive tackle turned guard in J.R. Sweezy that was a 7th rounder that just recently retired, had a long, successful NFL career. Jeremy Lane was a really solid slot corner and special teams guy for a number of years. I mean, that draft class was really good. But based on early returns, this group could very well be the best draft class the Seahawks have had. And you have to weigh the quarterback position in there with the 2012 situation. When you can get a 3rd-round QB like Russell Wilson that did what he did, that's obviously going to carry a lot of weight. But the Seahawks drafted some really critical positions. I mean, they got their 2 tackles for the next decade now in Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas. Got them both in the same draft. Hit on both those picks. They got a potential – I mean, I think he's right now the favorite for Offensive Rookie of the Year, but they got a guy that could be a potential perennial all-pro running back in Ken Walker III. Boye Mafe, very few people outside of Seattle are talking about him, but he was entered in the starting lineup to replace a struggling Darrell Taylor after week 3, and it's really coincided with their run defense suddenly getting much better, which I don't think anybody thought Boye Mafe was going to be a dominant run defender, but that's what he's been. He's helped set the edge, so he's off to a great start. He's playing really good football. And then the 2 corners that I mentioned. Yep. And then Tariq Young, their 7th rounder out of Lenore-Rhine, he has not made a catch on offense yet, but he had 2 huge special teams plays the other day, and his time is coming on offense. If D. Eskridge doesn't pick it up, Tariq Young's going to start getting those opportunities because Tariq Young is bigger, he is faster, he has more quickness. He's just got this bigger learning curve coming from a Division II school, but Tariq Young is an extremely smart – he's got an engineering degree. He is an extremely smart young man that Pete Carroll is fired up about. At some point, he's going to get his chances on offense. And Bo Melton on the practice squad, they still think could factor in as a receiver there, too. I mean, this draft class could have 7 or 8 contributors. We didn't even get to see Tariq Smith from Ohio State, and he looked really good in a couple of training camp practices before he got hurt. He's going to miss the whole season, but they get him back next year. I mean, you could have contributions from every single player that they picked for multiple seasons. It is a loaded draft class. And, oh, by the way, they've got 2 undrafted rookies that look really good, too. Joey Blunt's been outstanding on special teams, and I struggle with his name. I just talked to the player, but Josh Oniogu, who came from Framingham State, Division III school, made his NFL debut last week and had 3 tackles on just 11 defensive plays.
Nice.
And he looked really good rushing off the edge. He looks like an NFL 3-4 outside linebacker, and he was an undrafted guy. So, I mean, it's a fantastic rookie class. I think it is the best one, top to bottom, and then you add the undrafted guys in that John Schneider and Pete Carroll have unearthed.
It's just amazing how quickly that because again, everyone will zero in on Geno, again, deservedly so, but Geno is not able to accomplish, or the Seahawks as a team cannot accomplish what they've accomplished without the rookie class, and that's why it's so special. So defensively, who is the key player right now that the team can't afford to lose? Is there one guy, a couple of guys, and we'll just get away from some of the younger guys, but maybe, I mean, rookies, but tell me about some of the veterans that have really stepped up, that Seattle really kind of hangs their hat on right now.
I'm going to give you 2 veterans that I think have been instrumental in their turnaround the last 4 weeks, and that does not look like a fluke either. I mean, 4 games is a big enough sample size.
Sure.
I want to start in the trenches with one of the players they acquired in the Russell Wilson trade, which I know it's early and, Russell Wilson could turn things on and suddenly that trade looks good for the Broncos. But my goodness, does it look like one of the biggest heists in NFL history so far? Because Shelby Harris has been an outstanding addition. Noah Fant, I talked about him earlier. I mean, those 2 veterans have been key starters, and they've been stars the last couple of weeks for the Seahawks. Shelby Harris is getting a sack pretty much every game, it feels like. I know he's only got 2, but he's getting in the backfield all the time. He's been doing a great job against the run. He's a popular locker room figure. He's never been in the playoffs before, so he's just loving this. And really an infectious personality. You can just tell everybody gravitates to him. And he plays the game like he is in Pee Wee League. You can just tell he is having a blast out there. And that, again, that's infectious. This guy, every single game, is coming up with big plays. The Giants game, he hunted down Daniel Jones, who's one of the more athletic running quarterbacks in the NFL. Some people don't realize just how athletic he is. Shelby Harris chased him down, running outside, and tripped him up short of the sticks in the 4th quarter at 300 pounds. That was one of the most impressive plays from an effort standpoint that I've seen a defensive lineman make. But he seems to make plays like that on the regular. So
he's always been underrated. Always been underrated. Yep.
Oh, he should be a Pro Bowler. I mean, he should have been. I mean, he's had 3 years with 5.5 sacks or more in Denver the last 5 years. And yet, because Denver stunk, never got to the playoffs, he just was under the radar. Nobody knew who he was. People are talking about Shelby Harris now, and the fans in Seattle love him because he's one of the best interviews on the team. He's just a really awesome personality. He's funny. He's got a lot of pizzazz, and so he's really helped this defense. But I think the most instrumental player, and this is not taking shots at Jamal Adams because I'd love to see what this defense could do right now if they had Jamal Adams to go with this player. But I mentioned it earlier. Ryan Neal is playing like an all-pro the last 4 weeks. And some of your listeners might scoff at that idea. And they're like, who's Ryan Neal? But I'm just going to tell you this right now. There is one defender in the entire NFL since week 6 that has a sack, an interception, 2 forced fumbles, 3 tackles for loss, and 4 passes defensed. Who do you think he is? Ryan Neal. He's also the highest graded safety by Pro Football Focus during that span. And I only put so much stock into that, but you watch the film, it matches up. 88.6 grade. He has been doing it all, running around like his hair is on fire. And he's another one that the fans have just gravitated to because this dude almost quit football 2 years ago. He was going to retire and hang his cleats up when the Seahawks cut him at the end of training camp. Jamal Adams gets banged up a few weeks later when he's on the practice squad, and he intercepts Dak Prescott to end the game, end of the fourth quarter, and the rest is history. Every time they have called upon him, he has played like a starter caliber player, and now he has taken another step forward. He can play in the box. He can play deep as a safety. He can do everything, and he's just really fun to watch. And he's an easy guy to root for, too. So
he doesn't see the field
those two guys,
without Adams' injury.
Probably not. No, I mean, they would have been doing some 3 safety stuff because Sean Desai has been mixing that stuff in more. But Pete Carroll's wanted to have those 3 safety sets, but they always have somebody get hurt. Like Marquise Blair was supposed to be part of that, and they decided to give up on that in training camp. And quite frankly, he didn't look good. He's had too many injuries. The Panthers just cut him from their practice squad. So it looks like Seattle made the right decision on that front. But Ryan Neal is a fantastic football player that has to be part of their plans next year, regardless of Adams' health. I mean, you'd love to see – I think Adams is going to end up playing as a linebacker for him next year is what's going to happen. And I think that was really what they were planning to do this year. They were using him a lot as a linebacker in their nickel and dime sets.
Oh, yeah.
And I was intrigued to see how that was going to play out and unfortunately got hurt the first game. So, again, I'm not taking shots at Adams.
Sure.
I think he's a fantastic player. But so is Ryan Neal. And he deserves to be on the football field, and he's just proven it again now, taking another big step, and he's just been a game changer for them.
Yeah, well, look, it takes a few years from the FCS. It's not easy. It's not an easy process, and then again, sometimes you just need your chance. He got it. He's taken it. Who's the top edge rusher on the team?
Oh, that one's easy. Uchenna Nwosu. He is right up there with Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett for the best free agent signing that John Schneider has made in his entire time in Seattle. And that is, everybody's taking shots at John Schneider about his draft history. And yes, there have been some misses in recent years, but they've still been able to get some really good players. Even that 2019 class, I mean, DK Metcalf by himself and Cody Barton's now starting for him. He's gotten better as the years gone on. So there still were some good picks thrown in there. Even if the LJ Collier pick in the first round did not work out. Even Collier, the last 2 games since coming off injured reserve, has looked good. He's had 5 pressures in the last 2 games. So they're getting contributions across the board from everybody. But, going back to your question, Uchenna Nwosu, 7 sacks already this year. He's got the highest pressure rate in the NFL according to NFL Next Gen stats. He's been living in the backfield. He's been equally dominant against the run. He stuffed Kyler Murray on a QB read on Sunday. And at 250, 255 pounds, he's a perfect 3-4 outside linebacker for the scheme that they're running because he can win with speed. He can overpower people. I mean, he plays like he's bigger than 250, 255. He will bull rush tackles right into quarterbacks' laps. He's really good on stunts. He's been good on coverage. There was a play, he was on Saquon Barkley on a wheel route running stride for stride with him a couple weeks ago. So he has been a fantastic addition, and he is a borderline all-pro candidate right now with the numbers and the film he's putting
absolutely.
up that maybe isn't getting that kind of national attention, but he was a player of the week in week 1. He forced a fumble, had 2 sacks on Russell Wilson in that game, and it just seems like every week he's coming up with big plays. He's been fantastic.
Before I let you go, what kind of team or what do you think would cause Seattle the most problems moving forward? Because this doesn't look like a fluke, not just Geno, but the overall team. This looks like, especially with the Rams struggling and Arizona struggling and the NFC being down as a whole, that barring catastrophic injury situations, that this is a playoff team. And then everybody, look, Cincinnati made it all the way to the Super Bowl last year. So anything's possible. So, yeah, if you get to the playoffs, think big. What does Seattle need to do to improve, do you think? So, or who do you think, or what type of team do you think might cause them the most problems? What do you think they have to do as a team to get better? So if they do make the postseason, they can be legitimately looked at as a Super Bowl contender.
I think this game coming up in Munich on Sunday is going to be a telling one. And I know the Buccaneers have struggled this year. They're 4-5 for a reason. The offense has just not been able to get untracked. They've had injuries on both sides of the ball. But a team that has a big-bodied defensive tackle that can cause problems as a pass rusher and as a run defender would be the biggest concern, because as much of an upgrade as Austin Blythe has been, he is under 300 pounds. And winning with technique and finesse is only going to get you so far when you're taking on somebody like Vita Vea.
Sure.
And so what I'm really curious, they're going to still have to deal with Aaron Donald 2 matchups too. They haven't played the Rams yet. So teams like that have really good interior players. I feel like the guards have looked pretty good, and I think Blythe's done a nice job. I wonder how the Seahawks interior offensive line is going to hold up against Tampa Bay's front with Akeem Hicks now being healthy too, and how they're going to hold up against the Rams with Aaron Donald. That's really going to be a litmus test for this offense, because it feels like the tackles have handled really good pass rushers throughout the season so far. I mean, Nick Bosa only had 1 pressure going against Charles Cross in week 2, even though the Seahawks lost that game. I thought the tackles played fine. Their interior line had issues that game, though, dealing with Eric Armstead and some of the other guys the 49ers have. So teams that have really good interior defensive linemen that can take over games, those have been the teams that have given them the most trouble. They did hold Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence down a few weeks ago. So that might have been a positive sign moving forward. But they've got some teams like the Bucs coming up that I think are going to be interesting. On the other side of the football, playing against an elite quarterback, I'm still curious to see what they're going to do, because Kyler Murray certainly has not been that this year. The Cardinals' offense has looked bad. I don't know how healthy Justin Herbert was when they played them a few weeks ago, still coming off of that rib injury. Daniel Jones is still Daniel Jones. Yeah. He's improved a lot with the new coaching staff, but there are major limitations, and they were down to their 6th and 7th string receivers. So that game, as much of a test as it was, it could have been a lot more if they would have had their receivers there. So I'm curious to see how this young secondary goes against a quarterback like a Tom Brady this weekend. So again, this Bucs game, I think, even though they've been struggling, I think this is truly a game that could really be telling about where the Seahawks are at right now in terms of some things that I think might still pose problems for them. If they win this game and look good in both those facets, then you're feeling pretty good, because 4 of their last 5 games are at Lumen Field to close out the season. Okay. And I feel like the home field advantage is back this year.
Yeah.
And getting that home game against Russell Wilson week 1 set that up.
Sure. Yeah, I actually like him this week. I just do. I know Tampa Bay won last week, beat the Rams, but that they came this close to losing that game, and things have just not worked out for the Bucs. Seattle's sort of like played a certain level, Tampa hasn't, and you just feel like, look, Tampa Bay's favorite. And I don't know tell you the truth, whether they deserve to be, but okay, let them be the favorite. I think this is a great opportunity for Seattle, especially since it's not necessarily like a prime time game, but these London games, these Germany games, nobody else is playing. This is the morning. People that can watch the game, they're going to be glued into this and find out, is Seattle for real? Maybe they haven't even seen Seattle yet to really know whether or not Seattle's a for real team. So I think there's a great opportunity for Seattle to show everybody just how good they are going into the break. I think it is important that they win this game to prove that, and if they do, then I think the other side will look a lot better. And like I said, I think this is definitely a playoff team, and I got to feel that that's the way you probably think, and I'm sure the fans feel that way. That it would be a disappointment at this stage now if they didn't make the postseason the way the season's gone so far.
Yeah, that's definitely the territory that they've reached. Like I said, a few weeks ago, it was still kind of like, I don't know if this team's for real or not, but it certainly does feel that way. I think this is a separation game for the Seahawks coming up in Munich. If they win this game, they're going to be going into their bye at 7-3, and then they get the Raiders at home coming out of the bye. They're banged up, and they have struggled all year. Not going to be an easy game because they still got some talented players, but you're playing at home. Then they've got home games against the Panthers and the 49ers. So their rematch, San Francisco, is at home. They have mostly home games the second half of the season. It sets up for them to have a strong finish and maybe push for one of the top 2 seeds in the conference. So there's a lot riding on this game, in my opinion. If they lose, especially if somehow the Buccaneers end up dumping them pretty easy, if somehow that happens at 6-4, you're going into the bye limping a little bit, and you're wondering about some things going into the second half of the season. So I do think that this is a game that can help separate themselves a little bit in the NFC West. And again, it's a team that matches up, at least from my opinion. They're a team that matchup-wise could cause some problems for the Seahawks with the areas that I think are their concerns. So if they're able to beat a team like that, then that's going to ease those concerns a bit. And you'd be feeling pretty darn good if you're a Seahawks fan.
Well, beginning of the season, I think both Seattle fans and Jet fans were looking at the schedule and going, oh, I think that's a winnable game. But now it's, wow, that could be a real exciting matchup, Jets and Seattle. So, I think it's great. This just shows that the NFL is the NFL for this particular reason, because you just never know what's going to happen from year to year or even week to week. I think it's a tremendous story, and it could end up as the best story in all of the NFL, depending on how far the Seahawks go. So I'm looking forward to seeing how far it could go, and I look forward to talking to you again at some point, either towards the end of the season or maybe when the team is in a postseason, which I think would be great. So I appreciate it, Corbin. Your show.
Thanks for having me, as always.
You got it. Your show, by the way, you're on 6 days a week?
Yeah, Locked On Seahawks. During season, we're doing 6 shows a week. We got our postcast a couple hours after every game that we added to the menu this year. But, so Locked On Seahawks is going live 6 days a week and in video and audio.
That's awesome. And I was just looking here. That's January. Oh, it's January 1st, New Year's Day. Jets at Seattle. Maybe we'll have to talk that week.
That game might get flexed. That game might get flexed. We'll have to see where things go. I mean, Seattle only had 2 primetime games going to the schedule this year, but I could see a flex or 2 coming in the second half of the season.
Yeah, and the Jets have, I think, just the game before that, that Thursday night against Jacksonville. So you're right. Maybe that could be, if they keep winning, then that would be awesome. And maybe that's a good week for us to talk again. So, Corbin, I appreciate your time. Best of luck with the team the rest of the way, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
You got it, Corbin.